All right, so we're in the book of James. We're going to start a new book, new series, new year, new thing, right? So James, I love James. It's practical. It's just full of all kinds of stuff, you know. And he doesn't waste a lot of time with a big lengthy, hey, everybody, it's James. I mean, he kind of throws out in the verse, but he jumps right into verse 2 with a pretty ridiculous statement, really. He says in verse 2, James 1, count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds. Now, you might expect that type of a sentence like on the first line of a blog post or of a newspaper article where like someone's trying to pull you in and like, let me say something really crazy and you want to know what the rest of it means type of thing. But he's not doing that. He knows they're going to read it. I mean, he's just like, it's James, right? Right into the church. Obviously, they're going to read the whole thing. They're not like us today. They're not going to get bored halfway through and go to the next thing or something. So he actually means what he says here. Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds. Now, the word count here means to evaluate. You look at the various trials in life that you face. You evaluate them. And there's all kinds of trials, right? There's level 1 irritations in your life to level 10 crisis mode, right? And everything in between. And any day of the week, you're going to face some type of trial in your life. And he's saying, look at this big bucket of trials in your life that you go through now, tomorrow, next week, next year, in your past, whatever, and count them joy. Celebrate them. There's something positive about these trials. Instead of looking at each situation and coming to the conclusion that, well, man, God must hate me, I can't believe, or I must have really done something wrong, he's out to get me, and he's mad at me, he's turned his back at me, back on me or something, or people are mean and nasty, or life just really stinks. You know, instead of coming to that kind of a conclusion, our conclusion should be joy. This bad things happen. There's joy to be found in this, and it's not like yay bad things, but it's something bad is happening. I don't understand it. I don't get it. I don't know what God's doing through this, but I can have faith that says God never wastes a pain, and he's doing something in my life through this pain, through this challenge, this trial. Therefore, I can find joy. It's a faith statement here. Now, he talks about the various kinds of trials that we face. Some trials happen simply because we're human, right? I mean, I have a cough right now. It's a level 1 irritation. You know, as far as crises go, it's not a crisis, but it's been an irritation this week. I lay down at night. I've got a sinus thing going on, so I'll lay down, and immediately the drainage starts, and I start coughing, and then I can't stop, and I will literally cough all night long, like every moment of the night. It's an irritation. Ask Cheryl; she would say it's a major irritation. Ask my dog; he's really mad at me right now. I'm an irritation in his life because I just cough all over the place at home. So has it affected my life? Not in big ways. I mean, I've been a little sleepy this week, so I'm not getting good solid sleep. But it's a level 1 irritation. Compare that to a buddy of mine who told me yesterday that he was born with a heart defect, with a valve issue, and he knew the time would come when you'd have to do something about this valve issue. Well, it's time to pay the piper. He went to the cardiologist, and he's been working out and trying to keep healthy and everything. And the doctor basically said, "Yeah, stop. Like right now. Walk to your car. Don't do anything that will elevate your blood pressure because it will end you. I mean, it's that serious." And so he's right now in the process of scheduling a valve replacement, open heart surgery, repair the aorta going. It's basically the same surgery that they had talked to me about a few years ago, then decided, I guess you don't have that issue. And it's what he's going into. So that is a life-changing moment for him. He's at a level 10 situation right now. And they haven't even told all their family members yet because they're waiting for some things to get lined up so they can, that's a trial. That's a trial going on. Simply because we're human. He was just born that way. It was just the way it was. I mean, it's just what it is. You get sick because you're human. It's not an extra, punishment from God. It's not, it's just you're human. That happens. Matter of fact, every one of us at some point will have some news that will tell us you're nearing the end, of your life, whether some disease or cancer or something, age, whatever it is. We're going to hear that news. There'll be trials associated with that just because we're human. Or it could be a sudden, an accident or whatever. You know what I'm saying. There's trials associated with our life simply because we're human, just the way it is. Some trials come because of poor choices, not evil, not ill intent. It's just, man, I made a really bad choice here. I have a habit of making poor food choices, and that leads to things like, I should probably lose some weight, or I feel sluggish, or I just don't feel like I could. It's because of what I'm eating. Now, I've changed that last month, but the question is, will I still have that changed a year from now? Is it just a fad I'm going through right now, or is it something I'm really changing? Well, poor choices lead to all kinds of things. It could lead to diabetes. It could lead to obesity. It could lead to all kinds of issues that will have a chain reaction within my body. Is it a trial? Yes. It's something I put on myself. I did that, right? Addictions lead to all kinds of problems. I have sat in the home of a young couple who blew through over $200,000 worth of an inheritance they received at a casino. And they're like, just like that, it was in their bank account and it was gone. And they're like, we can't make our house payment. What are we going to do? And that was a trial. They were in a crisis right then. That's why they called the preacher. And it was through their own choices. Addiction sometimes will cause us to do things that will harm ourselves. I've done funerals of individuals who basically pickled their liver through alcohol. They just couldn't stop year after year after year after year. And they just kept going, and finally the liver said, I can't do it anymore. Kidney, whatever. I'm the preacher. I'm not a doctor. It was because of some poor choices. They'd probably still be alive if they hadn't done that. It's crisis on us. You spend money foolishly, you'll be in a financial crisis. You will. You drive too fast down the road at the wrong time, with the wrong guy with a radar on, what's going to happen? You're going to get a speeding ticket. Now, you could call it a trial, and it is, but it's from your own choice. You did that, right? Or you say something you shouldn't have at a time. Maybe you were tired, whatever. But you said it, and you shouldn't have. It can lead to relationship problems. Break the law, you go to jail. They're cause and effect things. Sometimes it's no evil was intended. We just made a choice that led to some challenges in our life. Some trials come because there is evil intent. We are sinners, by the way, right? Sometimes we just intentionally cross a line, and there's often a price to pay for that. Greed can lead to dishonesty, can lead to distrust, and cause all kinds of problems. Pride can lead to actions or words that you might say, or things you might do that will impact relationships. There are all kinds of sexual sins that can happen that can lead to all kinds of consequences, diseases, unplanned, unexpected pregnancies, marriage. There's all kinds of things that can happen because of our actions. Now, I don't know if anyone's ever calculated this. I don't know if you even can, but I'm just going to vaguely guess here as your resident mathematician, statistical genius. Probably most of the trials we go through, and that's such a vague thing, are us related. We like to blame other people, get mad at other people, maybe blame God, whatever. A lot of it boils back to us. But it's still a trial, and it's still a challenge, and it's still a difficulty, and there's still joy to be found in it. Some trials come because of other people's either poor choices or sinful intent. people who harm other people. Someone broke into my mom's house years ago, and I remember going through her house, helping her kind of put the window back together where they had broke through, and kind of walking through the house, taking inventory. And like, nobody was hurt. There wasn't a lot taken. She didn't have much to be taken, right, of value. But it was just this gloomy feeling of, man, someone broke in the house. I mean, that was a crisis in her life. And as a son in my life, there was nothing I could do to stop it. I didn't live there anymore, even if I did live there, I maybe wouldn't have been home at the time. And then the fear of, whoa, they're going to come again? I mean, what's going to happen? That it's someone else's choice that led to a crisis in her life. Or how often do we hear, seems like every month we hear of another stranger going into a crowd of people and causing harm with guns or knives or trucks or bombs or what have you. And there's this group of people now that are in a crisis, families that are hurting, individuals that are physically hurting and now emotionally dealing. There's just all kinds of trials that come in our lives. And Peter, the Apostle Peter, tells a group of believers who were going through a horrific time in their history as a church in the first century. He said in 1 Peter 4:12, "Dear friends, do not be surprised at the painful trial you are suffering, as though something strange were happening to you." Do you ever go through a time of bad trials and think, man, why me? And really the question probably should be, well, why not? I mean, that sounds kind of cold, but I will often ask myself, well, why not? Well, poor me, I had a little cold last week. Why me? Well, why not? It's happened to my neighbor too. I probably got it from him, the dirty rat. I mean, it's just how it is. It's just how it is. Life is hard. Difficulties and challenges are a part of life. It should be expected. And so James says, just right off the bat in his letter here, look at all these various kinds of difficulties. Your level 1s, your level 10s, your level 5s, all this stuff you're going through, your poor choices, or things that just happened to you as a victim, or things that had nothing to do with anything, just because you're human, just because you're alive, these things happen. Evaluate them, each one, count them, each hardship, you count them as a joy. You evaluate them as joy. Joy that is full and complete, not fake, not pretend, but honest joy in your life. And in verse 3 tells us exactly where the joy can be found. Because we'll often misunderstand this and think, oh, I'm supposed to put a smile on my face in the bad times. That's what God's asking me. He's not asking just to put on a fake smile. There's honestly some positive joy that can come in your life through the hard times. Count it all joy, verse 2 says, when you meet trials of various kinds. Verse 3, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. The testing of your faith produces steadfastness. The Greek word here means firmly fixed in place. A steadfastness, firmly fixed in place, immovable. The difficulties, the challenges, the pain that comes in our life produces a faith in you that is immovable if you work your way through it and you do it in a healthy way. They force you, challenges force us to rely on God. How often do we not rely on God? I got this, it's Tuesday. I can do a Tuesday, and then something bad happens, and all of a sudden you're on your knees praying. It takes us back to God. We rely on God. And as God confirms over and over again in your life how He is faithful and how He is there, your faith becomes firmly fixed in place and immovable. It takes years of going through level 1s and 2s and 3s, to when you hit a number 4 level stress, you can go, He always seems to work it through the 1s and 2s and 3s. I'm pretty sure He'll make the number 4 one too. I'll make it through this. It's hard. It doesn't make it easier. Doesn't make it great, doesn't make it enjoyable. It just means there's joy saying, God's got this. He's going to do something with me here. And have you noticed as life goes on, what maybe in high school you thought was a level 10, you get to be about 30, and that's like a level 5 now. You're like, well, I can handle this. That's like, I thought that was really hard. And now your level 10 is like, whoo, big time something. It was big time when you were younger, whatever your 10 was. But what I'm saying is you hit that 10 level crisis and God gets you through it and your faith strengthens and you become more mature and all of a sudden you can handle more. And so now that's moved down to a 5 because when the next 10 comes in, you're ready to, you can make it through that 10 because you've made it through what used to be a 10 is now a 5. Your faith is strengthened. You have this steadfastness to your faith. You are firmly implanted in your faith with God. Now, I wish there was another way. I wish there was an easier way to do this, to develop this good, genuine faith in your life. I mean, I wish you could just read a great book on faith and it would do it. It will help. A good book will help you on faith. It might give you pointers. It might give you some insights, some things you hadn't thought of. But man, there's nothing like going through the fire to cause a firm faith. I mean, it just does. More so than reading the book. I wish you could just learn from other people's pain. Now, you can learn from other people's pain. I've spent my life observing people and trying to learn from them. So I think that has helped me, but still there's nothing like me going through the experience to grow in my faith, to get a deeper, more genuine, deeper, real faith. It comes through the firestorms of life. It comes through me walking through the fire next to Jesus and him pulling me through it, and I can look back and say, wow, I've grown as a human being because of this. And it strengthens my faith. That is why I am 100% confident, 100% confident that God can pull me through the next crisis of my life. I don't know what it will be. I don't know. And it might take my breath away. And it might cause me to drop to my knees and go, what in the world? But I am confident I'll get through it. Even if it leads ultimately to death, because I know someday that'll happen. Surprise, of course it will. And I know because of my faith that if that is, ultimately it's like, well, joy for me. Good for me. My last breath here is the best thing that ever happened to me. Ultimately, my faith tells me that, but it's through going through that fire over and over again multiple times. I've seen how God has handled crises. I've seen how he's carried me through times, and it helps me when the bigger times come. I can sit across the table from someone who's going through a crisis, and sometimes you can get lost for a moment when you're in a crisis. You know how that is. You're trying to evaluate, you're trying to get your footing, and I can look them square in the eye with complete confidence and say, it's going to be okay. It really is. It really is. God's got this. I know it because he has every single time. Every time he has been pain in my life, in your life, he has brought you through it. It wasn't pleasant. It wasn't fun. It wasn't a thrill, but he got you through it. You're a stronger, better person because of it. I read an author talking about our text here in James that every time I read this, I just appreciate it more. He says, how you count or evaluate hard times tells you exactly where your faith is. James says to count it pure joy. This is like a test of our faith, right? So he says, how you count or evaluate hard times tells you exactly where your faith is. If you value comfort more than character, trials will annoy you. I like comfort. I've learned to embrace trials. They'll annoy you, they'll frustrate you, potentially anger you. If you value the material and the physical more than the spiritual, it will be very difficult to count it all joy if we live only for the present and don't care about the future. Trials will make us bitter people, not better people. Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. Our trials make us bitter or better, and it totally depends on our perspective. Are we angry? Are we annoyed? Are we upset? Are we mad at God? Are we mad at the people around us? Or are we saying, hey, God's teaching me something? If you're looking for a lesson, he'll teach you in anything in life. And I have seen believers who I profoundly respect become very bitter through trials. Somewhere they lost their way. And I have seen believers become stronger and more mature and more steadfast in their faith through the trials. It's a perspective. Every once in a while I'll read through the story of Job, especially the first few chapters, just to put life in perspective, especially if I get a little whiny, I'm having a bad day, having a bad week, whatever. I'll go back to Job. And I've always tried to read it through his eyes and try to feel what he felt. I can't even come close. I cannot fathom what he experienced in the Old Testament story of Job. He had 10 children who were grown adults, companions with him in his very successful business that he had going on. And in one day, all 10 children die. I can't fathom that. Right? So it's hard for me to read that completely through his eyes, to feel what he felt as the news of the death of his children came in one day, all 10. And his business completely, his empire, it's more than just like a business. It wasn't like a lemonade stand on the road. I mean, he had this empire completely collapses on the same day. I mean, it is a horrid day for him. And then shortly after that, he loses his health. Boils, painful, oozing, sore boils cover his body, foot to toe. Now, head to toe. I can have like a hangnail and walk around like, and it affects my mood and my attitude about things. Here's a guy who's lost his family, his business, his income, his future, and his health. And he's sitting in a dung pile, of ashes and just waste. And he's just laying there. And his wife is like going, just curse God and die. Let's just end this. He's at the bottom of the pit. I mean, I can't even fathom where he is, other than I just try to put myself, but I don't want to fathom. Maybe that's it. But look at what he says in the midst of all this. In Job 23, he's talking about God. It says, when he has tested me, I will come forth as gold. Man, that's about the time I'd say, everybody's against me. It's not fair. God doesn't love me anymore. What's wrong? I mean, I'd be in the midst of level 10 crisis whining mode. I'm just being honest. And Job says, man, you just wait. Just wait till we get through this. When he's tested me, I'll come forth with gold. He has assessed his situation. He has assessed the trials of various kinds that he's going through. And as painful as it was, and as much as he hated, obviously, going through it, and as much as he never would ever want anyone or himself to ever go through anything like this, as much as he dreaded every hour of his life, he knew ultimately he was going to come out of that walking through this fire refined, pure as gold, and he would be better than before. That's some faith. His faith was tested. I'd say he did pretty well, at least going by this statement here. Faith in our life looks at hardship as a blessing. Not as something to run away from, not as a curse, not as a terrible, awful thing. Not that you enjoy it. It's not saying you love it, but it is something that you embrace as a blessing. You don't whine that it's unfair. You don't fear that God's turned his back on you. It looks at hardship as this opportunity to grow. This is what James is saying, really in his own way, in these first few verses to the letter. Well, I want to read it again because these are so powerful. This comes up so often in Scripture, probably because it comes up so often in our lives. Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness, and let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. Talking about a growing, sustained faith, a rock through the pain. Two quick things I want to leave you with that I think is important to remember in this text, because I've seen this taken out of context a lot in life, and we just do that sometimes with Scripture. We're in crisis, and we jump to what we think it says and not what it actually says. Here's one thing. We're not to be joyful for trials, but in trials. There's a distinction here. And I think it's pretty important to separate. He isn't saying you're going through a really super time. You're going through a level 10 crisis. Put on a fake smile and pretend like you're not. That's not what this is saying. Now, sometimes we might do that because we're trying to force ourselves to find the joy in it, but that's not what he's saying here. It's not put on a fake smile. It's not pretend really hard that everything is great, because pretty soon it will be. Your life's falling apart, but just pretend it's not. Just tell everybody, hey, have a good day. How about you? That's not what it's saying at all. See, reality is it's okay to cry. It's okay to grieve. It is okay to acknowledge your world is falling apart. It is okay to be angry. I mean, it's not like God doesn't know what you're going through. He knows exactly what's going on in your heart, your mind, and your soul. And so do we. If we know the pain this caused in your situation. So be authentic. Be real. We have this Grief Share support group that we host every so often. And it's a series of videos and conversations from experts on grief, as well as people who are going through or have gone through the grief process. I found it amazingly healing for me personally, dealing with grief when you lose someone. And we probably ought to do it again one of these days. We just do it every once in a while. It's about 12, 13 weeks long. But out of this several week long teaching and support group setting, one of the experts says in one little clip, one time, something that has stuck with me, and I think of often. Matter of fact, I quote this guy off. I don't know who it was. I should actually go back and see who it was so I could give him credit. But he basically says that we grieve deeply because we love deeply. It's so simple, but yet so profound. The reason death hurts is because we love that person so much. Okay? I don't grieve so much the name of a stranger in a newspaper article about someone in some other place that I've never. I feel bad, like, oh. But when it's someone who I love, who I've vested my life in, who I'm in relationship with, it tears your world down. And the deeper you love someone, the deeper that hurts. James is not saying here to pretend you don't hurt, to fake it. He says to evaluate your hurt, allow yourself to go through the hurt. Another one of the things from that video series is they talk about leaning in to the pain. You have to acknowledge it's there. Acknowledge it, lean into it, embrace it, feel it, let it process. You count that hurt as joy, because you know in the long term you are going to get through it. Even though it's painful, even though it's awful, even though it's terrible, you will get through it, and you'll come out stronger, more refined through the fire, as a better person. Several years ago, some friends of ours lost an infant son, and it was devastating, as you would think. It was their son, and they're level 20 out of 10, crisis mode and pain, and it was awful, and the whole thing was awful and terrible. It was devastating. What for me hurt for them even more is I saw them misunderstand this verse, and it hurt them more because they're at the funeral, and they got the impression that counting it all joy meant spiritual people should look happy in pain. Look like you're enjoying pain, right? And they're grieving their son, and they're hopping around, smiling, saying, oh, he's in heaven. We're just so glad our son's in heaven. Oh, isn't it a good day for him to be in heaven? And they're crushed on the inside. And on the outside, they're putting on this show. We just want to be a good example. We want to be good Jesus people. Maybe people will come to Jesus through this. And their heart was good. I'm not criticizing them. I'm just saying that hurt them because they didn't deal with the pain. And later on, it caused more pain and more challenge and more difficulty for them. God doesn't say fake it. Just embrace it. Count it as joy because you're going to get through it. You have to get through it, though. You have to get through it. Whatever the crisis is, whatever the pain is. We're not called to be joyful for pain. We're called to be joyful in pain. There's a difference. Second thing, when we allow pain to run its course, we grow. And that's where the joy comes from. That there's a purpose. There's something going. We're going somewhere with this. It's not just meaningless, right? Paul echoes James's thought in Romans 5 when he says, we rejoice in our sufferings. Kind of the same flavor as James, isn't it? We rejoice in our sufferings, knowing the suffering produces endurance. Endurance produces character. Character produces hope. Hope does not put us to shame because God's love has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us. These are all words forged in pain. Suffering leads to perseverance. If you keep going through the suffering, pretty soon you become stronger and stronger and stronger, and you persevere. Perseverance leads to building character. Character builds hope in our life because we've seen God at work. And again, the number 10 level suddenly becomes a 5 because when the next 10 comes, you're stronger. You become deeper in your faith. That's what that's all about. So we don't try to run and hide from pain and from difficulty and from suffering. We don't try to mask it with medications or chemicals or food or activity or whatever it is that we can mask pain with. We don't try to play a blame game and point fingers and get angry at everybody, including God sometimes, because that's not helpful. We know eventually we will come out of the dark times and there will be light. Always, always, there will be light. Again, Apostle Peter echoes some of these thoughts by explaining how pain confirms our faith, leads us not only to grow, but ultimately a step further, actually to worship. 1 Peter 1:6, in this you greatly rejoice. This is a church being beat down. This is a suffering church. Death is happening, persecution, right? In this you greatly rejoice, though for a little while you may have had to suffer grief in all kinds of trials. These have come so that your faith, of greater worth than gold, which perishes even though refined by fire, may be proved genuine, may result in praise, glory, and honor when Jesus Christ is revealed. Your suffering, as you persevere through that and grow through that, and it makes you a stronger person, you get to the point where even in pain, you not only say, there's joy, I know it's going to get better, but I can worship God in a genuine, again, not with a fake smile, praise God, everything's terrible. That's not, no, but you can genuinely praise God saying, God, I not only do I believe, I just know you're working in this. I know it. And it can lead to worship. My mom passed away 12 years ago. It's hard for me to believe it's been that long. I had to actually look it up to confirm the date because I'm like, no, it can't be 12 years. 12 years. And of course, it's mom, right? So it's pain and there's grief and there's turmoil and upheaval in your life. We were very, very close. I was her favorite son, as I should be. We just had a great, great relationship. But I had experienced pain before. So I knew how to go into this pain. What was a level 10 before was now a level 5. So this was a new level 10. But I had experienced pain before, and God had brought me through it. I'd experienced God's peace in pain before. So I was able to more clearly see, even in that God's in this. He's just in this. I was able to face, I was much closer to my mom than I was my dad. My dad died years earlier. His hit me harder because I hadn't had that level of pain before. With mom, it hurt, but there was also a peace. And with some of the circumstances, with knowing with the dementia, she was going to go through some things that she got saved from, actually, by dying before that. There was actually a little bit of joy in there of almost a good for you, Mom. It hurt. Don't get me wrong. And there was some pre-grieving going on because she was declining through dementia. So like I knew it was coming. It just came way sooner than we expected, than anybody expected, and died unrelated to dementia. So it was a shocker and everything. But God had been through that with me before, and so this time I was able to face it differently. It's almost like it's been 12 years. It's like it was yesterday, though. The first Sunday after her death, I go to church. We're still meeting in schools, of course, at that point. And we sang one of the songs that was in our rotation at the time. Songs kind of come and go, and it comes back, and that type of thing. And this is one of those songs that was in our rotation. And I remember singing this song freshly with the death of my mom in my mind and in my heart. And as we're singing this song, I was just overwhelmed with peace, saying, God, you're so good. Which is a crazy thing to be thinking in the midst of intense grief. But it's true. It's a song you'll probably recognize. Blessed be your name. In a land that is plentiful, where your streams of abundance flow, blessed be your name. Blessed be your name when I'm found in the desert place. And there I was in a desert spiritually, Though I walk through the wilderness, blessed be your name. Good times or bad, God, blessed be your name. Every blessing you pour out, I'll turn back to praise. It's easy when it's good stuff. I won the lottery. Praise God. Yeah. I mean, that's pretty easy, right? But when the darkness closes, then, Lord, still I will say, blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your glorious name. And we hit this next verse, and just in the context, it was probably one of the most intense spiritual moments of my life. Blessed be your name, and the sun is shining down on me. Everything's great, right? The world as it should be, is as the world's all as it should be. Blessed be your name. Blessed be your name on the road marked with suffering. Though there's pain in the offering, blessed be your name. And there I was singing in pain. It was painful to even utter out these words, but peaceful. It was beautiful. And there, my mom didn't care. By that point, she's dancing. She's in heaven. She's doing the hula dance. She was probably there going, doing everything. That was just for those of you who remember her. She was just a silly gal. And I just remember singing that song that morning, and God just like being right there in the midst of this incredible pain, the most intense pain a human can feel. I could still worship. Blessed be your name. Blessed be your glorious name. This is a challenge for us from James. Isn't it crazy? He just starts right off this way. I mean, he doesn't like, let's work into the big stuff. He just starts out and goes heavy. I don't know what your trials are. I don't know what your next one will be. I don't know what's coming up in your life. I don't know what this week, next year, I don't know what the next 5 years are for you. But here's what I know. God will be with you. He'll be with you. And so when you have those various trials, level 1 to level 10, you count them, you assess them, and say, God's in this. I don't see him. I don't know where it is. I don't know how. And may you find peace. Even when you don't feel, you can't grasp it. Just that faith says, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay.